Hello and welcome to the 1010 podcast with Andrea McKee. On this podcast, we zoom in really micro and we zoom out really macro because the goal here is to say, am I on the right path for my life and how I want my life to go? And if I am, then let's keep going, let's keep doing it. And if I'm not, then let's be brave enough to pivot. Because as far as we know, we have one life to live. And that is now. So there is no better time than now to choose what is next. The reason I am calling this podcast 1010 is because I am a mirror of you and you are a mirror of me. And every single person can learn something from another person. And when we are open to reflecting on our lives, man, that's when the good stuff happens. P.S. 1010 is my birthday, so it is my favorite number. Let's dive in. All right, welcome back to the 1010 podcast. I am so happy to be here. I am really excited about this episode today because I've kind of been putting it off, thinking there is some right time to do it, but there isn't. The right time is now. So I am going to be talking all about death and connecting with the energetic field of spirits. Now, my beliefs about what happens in the next realm have shifted significantly over time. Now, I do believe in spirit, consciousness, energetic fields, maybe all of the above, and maybe we experience it as different things at different times. I don't necessarily feel the need to go into what specific beliefs I have or that I have to nail them down in order for this to be legitimate. So one of the ways that I like to think about us as human beings feeling connected is an energetic field that we all tend to experience in some way. And that is often through things like, and you have most likely experienced this as well, where you'll be thinking of somebody and you'll be like, oh, I need to text them. And guess what? They text you. Or you're like, oh, I need to call this person. And then they end up calling you, or vice versa. I believe it's because we are connected energetically to each other and we are part of this earthly experience where we are entwined energetically, and especially with the people that we know and love and the people who matter to us. And sometimes those people that matter to us, that experience with them changes over time. You know, I might be thinking of someone that I haven't talked to in years, and then we both start thinking about each other at the same time because there's something in our lives that actually needs to connect. And that's what I feel. Some people think they're being led by the Spirit of God. Some people think it's Holy Ghost. Some people think it's, other things. I personally believe it's an energetic field that we all participate in. And when we can connect to that and open up to it and basically see ourselves in that, it's this beautiful web, literally the network effect of just existing here together. And, I do this all the time, and you probably do too. I love dogs. I'm allergic to them, but I love noticing them when I'm walking by them. There's just something so beautiful about animals, and particularly, domesticated ones that we've decided we want as part of our lives. We had a fish one time, a beta fish, that my husband and we definitely had a connection with this fish. And I know it sounds, for some people, maybe out there, but for most of us, I think in some way or other, we've had a connection to an animal, and not everybody has. But, I definitely think that there are specific connections that we have with animals that are special, extra special. And ours in particular was this fish. And even after this fish passed, which experience in and of itself was pretty remarkable, just the way that it felt like it waited for us to wake up in the morning before it like said its last goodbyes and then took its last breath. I don't know. Do fish breathe? They breathe underwater. Yes. Okay. And so it took its last breath, and then it literally felt like it was waiting for us. And I do believe that these connections can be really powerful for us and make us think more deeply about what is life and what is actually part of this experience. And that actually moves us onward into the next story that I want to tell about in 2020, when I started feeling like I needed to pursue music. Not even just that I wanted to, or that it was like, it wasn't an ask. It was like, this is your job. And if you don't take it, you will look back on your life and regret when you're 80. Like, why didn't you just give it your full effort? And every single day for 5 years prior to that, it was these thoughts in my mind. Why aren't you writing songs? Why aren't you writing? Why aren't you making music? Why are you doing everything else but this? And so that's why eventually I ended up selling the company that I created for athletic, adventurous women called Sweat Seat. It was a seat cover to put in your car. It was a fantastic design. But it wasn't my soul's true purpose. And even though I absolutely loved what I built and I was so proud of it and my customers were so happy with it, I kept hitting block after block after block. And it was like, why are you not writing songs? Why are you not writing songs? And so eventually on Christmas morning at 3 a.m. when I was awake, I was like, I'm going to do it. I'm going to pursue music. And I don't know exactly what it looks like and what this is going to be like for me. I now have 3 children. I don't know what this is sort of going to hold for me. And so I just decided, okay, I'm going to. So in 2021, I wrote 42 songs, which is quite a bit. That's a little less than a song a week. And when you're a busy mom, that's quite a bit. And so I was just on a roll, writing. I was writing about my experiences in my faith transition, leaving the church that I had grown up in. I was writing about love. I was writing about my children. I was writing about my life and about healing. And I mean, about everything. I was writing about everything. And it was so satisfying to my soul. I felt so incredibly fulfilled. And I genuinely believe that creativity is one of our greatest sources of power here on this planet. Is when we create something, we just magnify ourselves. And, whether we are creating from ourselves, from our own thoughts and experiences, or whether we're channeling some other energetic field or person or spirit from a different realm, may vary from time to time. I don't think necessarily that we are the geniuses. And Elizabeth Gilbert talks about this very idea that we are partners with the unseen world and with an informational field or an energetic field or spirits who want to manifest their ideas into this realm, this physical experience. And my personal experience with this was that when I was doing so much writing in 2022, I started thinking about, and this was early 2022, I started thinking about my roommate who passed my freshman year of college. She and I were roommates. We had a great time together. She was vivacious and fun and joyful and so full of life. And she was a songwriter, but she played guitar. And so she would frequently get her guitar out and play songs and write songs. And I started getting this sense in 2022 that she was actually helping me, that she was writing with me. and that she wanted her ideas to be manifest into real life. And some of these songs that I was writing at the time were deeply healing. Like one was called Surrender, one was called It's Okay. And it never occurred to me until this time in 2022. I mean, I lost her back in 2002. I had grieved the loss of her from the perspective of her family. And I don't believe I had ever fully experienced the loss, the physical loss of her for myself. And it wasn't until I felt her helping me write that I actually felt really sad that she wasn't physically with me in person to help me write and for us to be each other's cheerleaders for writing and playing and making music together. So I wrote her a letter, and it was like a 3-page letter of how much I missed her and what I feel like she's been doing with me lately in helping me write, and how sorry I am that I didn't get a chance to fully be in her full presence and appreciate exactly who she was entirely. I finally grieved her loss, but then I was grateful for her presence because she was still influencing me all these years later. And in our realm, we think of things in terms of time. And so for me, it's been like 20 years, but for her, time doesn't exist. I mean, things just happen. Imagine a child. Time doesn't exist. My 5-year-old still says things like, he thinks something that happened 2 years ago happened yesterday. Like in his mind, all things are they're just recalled because they happened in the past, but to him that past doesn't sort of hold time frames. It just is in the past, or it hasn't happened yet, or it's in the now, but there is no timeline for him. And as C.S. Lewis said, we are like a fish out of water in our timeline experience here on Earth. I'm paraphrasing what he said, but it's this idea that we are not natural to time being taken. Like that's why a whole year can pass and we'll be like, oh my gosh, I can't believe it's been a year. Or a whole month can be like, where did the time go? And we're always just so confused at how time passes so quickly. It's because it's not natural for us, but it's the state of our existence in order for us to function in order. And around that same time frame that I was feeling a lot of connection to this roommate who had passed in a car accident back in 2002, just 3 days after my birthday, by the way. It was just completely unexpected. It was like, how is she gone? She literally just called me and said they were thinking about coming back in time to go to church. And it was like 1 a.m. I was like, can't you guys just wait until the morning? And she was like, no, like her friend really wanted to get home to go to church, and so they decided to, and within an hour he had fallen asleep, and sadly she was killed in an instant when they ran into a telephone pole, and he walked away with no scratches. And this in and of itself is like this idea of convergence for me is a whole different topic and episode that I will definitely be touching on at some point. This idea of how things collide and why they collide when they do, and our role in that collision or potential collision. So convergence will be a future episode. All right, so during this time that I was feeling her connection to me with music, I started feeling my grandmother's presence, my dad's mom, a lot. Just regularly remembering her and thinking about her and feeling like she was around me. And back then I was like, am I just imagining this? Like, why am I making this up? But I've since come to just trust myself that when I feel these things, it's because it is real. And I don't need to doubt I don't need to question and second guess and, think I'm making it up, because I'm not. And so I kept feeling her presence. And around the same time, I ended up doing a psychedelic healing session. And in this session, nothing in particular happened regarding my dad. But when I woke up in the morning and then the next day I ended up calling my dad, I called him because I felt this draw to call him. And I ended up just feeling like I needed to ask him some questions about his life. Now, my dad was a very troubled man. He had a lot of mental health issues. He was very difficult to be around most of his life. He was always fighting someone on something and trying to dominate the scenarios, always trying to prove he was strong or right, always needing to be basically the dominant one in every relationship. And it eventually took him to prison, which story I will get into at some point. And leading up to this phone call, he had been out of prison now for 2 years. And this is where I felt like my grandmother was helping me, because it felt as if she had been almost with me, helping me kind of think deeply about my dad, helping kind of analyze, so that when I had this psychedelic healing experience, my heart was open and ready to ask the right questions. And I do feel like I was asking the questions almost from her perspective. And he and I ended up talking for about an hour and a half, and we ended up drilling down to 2 core beliefs that he had from the time that he was in 1st grade and 3rd grade. Those 2 core beliefs are what drove every single decision in his life. And as he got older, those decisions compounded. He began to feel more regret because he was hurting people and he was causing pain to those that he loved. And my dad, by the end of that conversation, was having aha moments, and you could tell he was introspecting and thinking deeply. And I was helping to heal those wounds with reminding him, these were not things that were within your control at those ages. We were literally going through and reprogramming his mind. And I say we because I completely believe that it was my grandmother helping me to know what to ask him and how to see it from the mother's perspective that back then she did not have. And even if she had that perspective, it's possible she felt powerless to change the circumstances at the time. And after that phone call, you know what happened between us? Peace. For the first time in my dad's life, I completely began to sense peace in him. Not because I'm some great person who had something so powerful to teach him. No, it was literally me asking questions because I completely feel like his mother knew that there was a possibility that he could change his perspective about himself, which in turn changes how you treat other people. I ended up sending my dad 2 CDs of my songs, and you know what? He listened to them every single day for like an hour or 2. He would just put his headphones on, and he would listen to them in his CD player because he didn't have electricity. He was just kind of out by himself on this 20, acre lot. And, he was lonely there. He didn't get personal interaction. People didn't want to be around him. He really had created a life for himself that was very, very lonely. And in my case, I had stayed in connection with my dad because I knew how to set boundaries with him, and I knew how to protect myself from being manipulated. And he was now to a point where he was past most of that manipulation, but not entirely. There were still times when it would occasionally come up, but then, he would catch himself. He really was beginning to heal. And I truly believe that the reason I needed to pursue music more was so that I could help my dad and my relationship heal. For me, music is healing, processing and manifesting what I want. It's healing my past, processing the current of what I'm experiencing, and manifesting what I want in life. And I have songs and threads of songs that have literally done each of those things. I don't even think I write songs unless I'm doing those things. And I didn't realize until after my dad passed that me pursuing my music was more than just me fulfilling something that I kind of needed to do. It was so much deeper and so much bigger than me. It was for a reckoning. When my mom passed in April of 2024, it was expected and unexpected. The previous October, she had kidney failure, and that kidney failure led her into dialysis, which she chose to participate in for the next 6 months. We really didn't know how long she had. I mean, some people go on dialysis for a very long time and some people don't. And dialysis was filtering out her blood and making sure that it was clean for her body. And in March, she fell, and then she really wasn't able to fully recover after that. It was really hard for her to get to the bathroom. It was really hard for her to get to where she needed to go. Well, by this time, it was, a couple of years after my previous psychedelic healing session, and I actually was, I was going to be doing another one, and I was flying into Salt Lake City to do that. My mom lived in Montpelier, Idaho, and at the time, I didn't know that she fell. I called my mom right before I went into my psychedelic healing session, and that's when I found out that she had fallen like a couple weeks prior, and then she was slowly deteriorating. And I talked to my brother, who she lived with, and found out a little bit more about what was going on. I felt a sudden urgency to see my mom. The previous October, I mean, this is where this, we talk about serendipitous situations or kismet or things that just are not coincidences, and people are like, oh, this is definitely not a coincidence. This kind of thing happened. This is genuinely where I believe we have this energetic field that we are all connected to. And when we truly are in need of that connection, it will manifest itself through us. We will know what to do. The previous October or September and August, I had been trying to decide what I was going to do to celebrate my 40th birthday. And I was going to do some things with some friends, and it was going to be a big celebration, and I was going to do all this, but then I just kept feeling overwhelmed. Like, this isn't the right thing. I don't know why I can't just get into this, and I can't feel excited about it. All of the plans that I wanted to make, I could not follow through on them. And I just thought, gosh, like, what is wrong with me? I'm going to be 40. I should celebrate. But in the end, I ended up just deciding to go on a solo trip by myself to Sun Valley, Idaho. And I was like, I'm just going to go bike riding in the mountains. And that's all I want to do. And crazy enough, when I got there, I found out my mom was ambulanced to the hospital that was 3 hours away from me there. And previously, I had been planning on like Costa Rica maybe, or like just some really extravagant places. But I am a very nurturing type of person. Like, if my family needs me, or that I, if someone is struggling, I want to be there. Not to a point of depletion. I do believe I can have boundaries for myself, but I do enjoy nurturing and being there for family members. So when I found out my mom was in the hospital 3 hours away, I was like, I'm going. So I just drove for 3 hours and saw my mom, spent some time with her, got her flowers, and then went back. I just made sure I opened up my time for her. And I was really grateful looking back on it, because hindsight's always 20/20. You know what they say. There's a reason why we have all these little idioms and sayings in our culture. It's because these things are real. Hindsight is 20/20. And when I looked back, I was so grateful while I was there. Wow, This is why I couldn't follow through on anything that I had been planning and why I couldn't get excited about anything else, because I didn't know this was going to happen and that I would prefer in every way to be there for my mom. And then, of course, fast forward to me having the psychedelic healing journey. And then 3 weeks after that, I flew back because we had been talking to my mom and basically let her know, because it was so hard for her at this point to get in and out of a chair. Her leg was so hurt and she was in so much pain going back and forth to dialysis that it was exhausting and really, really to a point where she wasn't going to recover from her fall. So we told her that if she wanted to stop going to dialysis, that we would support her and that we would be there with her when she passed, because she would have a few days before she actually passed from when she stopped doing dialysis. And that's what she did. She decided she was going to stop doing dialysis about a week later, and then I got a flight out. My brother and I, and then some other siblings dropped in. My brother and I spent the last 3 days with her, playing beautiful music, playing music that touched us deeply, including a song I wrote for my son just a couple months prior called Goodbye for Now. When he went to preschool, I wrote that song for him. I came home bawling from dropping him off and decided to write him. And it was very much had elements of my own mother in that song because of things that she used to say to me when I was little that I, found endearing. I added those into the song. So I massaged her feet and brushed her hair, and my brother and I made sure that she got to talk to everybody who, really mattered to her. And in a moment when it was just she and I said to her, Mom, if you want to come back after you pass and just tell me about what it's like over there, I would love for you to do that. She chuckled and she said, well, we'll see if they let me. I went to sleep the last night before I thought she would pass, and I said to her before I went to sleep, I said, hey, Mom, I know you can do this. You can pass to the next life. It's okay. You're safe. And it's time. We will all be okay, and we will miss you, but we'll be okay. I gave her a kiss on her forehead, and I knew she wanted to be alone. She couldn't talk anymore. She was doing the rattling breathing, so I knew it was time. And I went to bed, and as I was drifting off to sleep, I saw her face. And I don't mean that I imagined her face, because it wasn't me imagining her face. It was a transparent view of her face in face size in front of me. And she smiled with that beautiful smile that my mother has. And then she went and she said goodbye. And then I dreamed of her that night. She and we were frolicking through fields, and she was wearing the most adorable jeans, and we were having such a good time. And then we were going shopping for plants and herbs because she loved those things. And then eventually in my dream, she was sick and lying on the floor, and I was kind of tending to her and tending to the plants in the room and making sure that she felt comfortable and safe and warm. And when I woke up in the morning, I knew that she had passed. And I went in and I said to her, Mom, I'm so proud of you. That was so hard to do, but you did it. You stepped into the unknown. That is one of the hardest things that any of us ever has to do, is step into the unknown. Whether we're going into the next life or we're stepping into a new phase of our life, much like metamorphosis, where we're going from one thing that we feel we should be doing to another thing. And sometimes that transition or pivot is really hard to do. But I felt so much happiness for her, and I knew she was happy and released. She was ready. And I knew that she came to visit me the night before, that she came to say her goodbyes, and she came to let me know that she would be visiting me again. About 5 months later, my dad passed. He unexpectedly got sick, was hospitalized, and ended up dying 3 months later in the hospital. I won't go into the details of that story, but he had amends to make. And now that I think about how hard it was To see him suffering in that hospital bed for 3 months and not getting the care that I felt like he should as a human get. That hospital taught me about what I'm capable of advocating for someone and learning deeply about medical practices and how to advocate for your loved ones. It also gave family members time to spend with him after a long, arduous life with my dad. In this place, he was no longer a threat. And I suppose because I have an interest in the next life and how it works, and maybe that was inspired by my mom's deep interest in near-death experiences. But of course, I had to say the same thing to my dad. And so I did. In a quiet moment, I said, "Hey, Dad, if you want to come back and tell me about what it's like over on the other side and tell me what you're doing and what you're up to, I would love to know." And I took my guitar and I would sing to him. My parents both loved my singing, and from the time I was little would call me a little songbird because I was singing everywhere I went in the house, and I still do. But unlike my mom, after she passed, I felt her presence nearby. I saw her essence everywhere around me for weeks and months. But with my dad, when he passed, it was like he was gone. Like, I don't know where he went or what he was doing, but I think he was just ready to go explore or resolve things with people, or I'm not exactly sure, but he was gone, like gonesies for like several weeks. And my husband had a surprise trip for us, and I didn't know where we were going. It was for our 10th anniversary. And as my dad was sicker and sicker, my husband was like, "Andrea, I'm just really scared that I've been planning this trip for like more than 6 months, and I'm afraid that your dad and his health is going to like cause you to stay home from the trip, and I really, really want us to go." And I assured my husband, I will definitely make sure that no matter what, I will go. And not long after that, I got word that my dad's kidneys failed and that he basically had 3 days to live. So I got on a plane and headed out to Utah and spent the next 3 days with my dad. And then after he passed away, 3 weeks later, my husband and I went on this trip. And I didn't find out. So we live in California and my husband wanted to keep it a total secret. So he told me like what I should wear for what different types of activities, so that I made sure that I packed everything I needed. We flew from California to Atlanta, and then at the Atlanta gate is where I saw where we were going, and it was to Peru. Now, the crazy thing about Peru is that I have always wanted to go to Peru. I wanted to go to Machu Picchu. My dad actually served a mission for the church that I grew up in when he was like 19 years old. He served in Peru and Bolivia. And as I said before, after my dad passed, it was like he was gone. I did not feel him for a second after he was gone. It was just like a void. Not even a bad void, just a like, wow, you were ready to go. And then from there, crazy enough, when I hit the ground in Peru, I felt his presence. My dad loved the people of Peru and Bolivia. He had so many mission stories. His mission was one of the most beautiful times of his life. And one morning when I was in Lima, Peru, which is a city that he also spoke about, I was walking into the bathroom of our hotel and I heard a voice. I mean, it wasn't really a voice. It was a thought that I knew was from my dad. And it said, "I'm so sorry, Andrea. Will you forgive me?" And I knew he was talking about all the pain that he had caused me and my family in this life. And I said, "Yes, I do forgive you. And will you forgive me for not letting go of who you used to be once Mom passed?" Because he and I had done a lot of healing our relationship. And then once my mom passed and I started reading some of her old journals, I started bringing up all that old stuff again. And I don't believe that was actually the best thing for me to do. And then that was it. And the rest of the trip, I would feel his presence. I would remember stories that he had told me. And it felt like he was on, a lot of that journey with us there in Peru. And we had such a great time. It was so beautiful. And I could see why he loved these people so much. I loved them too. And then after that, I would just feel him here and there. It wasn't all the time. And same with my mom. I would think about them a lot. And not long after that, I had a friend whose dad was dying. And all I wanted to do was be with him while he was getting ready to die. I wanted to create a beautiful, warm, lovely, musical space, something that was deeply fulfilling and deeply calming. But it wasn't, the right timing. I wasn't invited to be there after I offered, and that was okay. And, recently, in fact, just a couple days ago, and this is why I felt so compelled, not even compelled, just like a knowing, like this, okay, it's time to kind of share some of these things and like put all the dots together. Because I kind of last minute decided to go for a run on this beautiful trail, green grass all along this trail, and kind of a cloudy day. And it was just honestly just the most perfect weather. And I had been listening to a podcast called The Telepathy Tapes, and you may have heard of it, but if you haven't, I highly recommend. It's by Kai Dickens, and I was just listening to the second episode of season 2, and it was about mediumship. I've had a recent interest in mediumship, mainly because I've had a lot of experiences with my parents passing. I mean, I've had many dreams of my mother, and I can go into some of those if I have a little bit of time here, but just so many connections to the other side that feel legitimately real. And I had a recent tarot card reading at a going away gathering for a beautiful friend of mine. And when the psychic who was in there met me, she said, "Wow, I'm getting really psychic energy from you. Like, I'm getting a sense that you live in like 2 different realms, this one and then the one of spirits." And I was like, I feel that. I definitely have a desire to be close to my parents, even on the other side, and to know what they're doing and to kind of understand what's going on over there. And she just said, no, it's very palpable here with you. She said, you're definitely between these 2 worlds. And I have dreams, like I said, a lot, not just of my parents, but of other things that make me think of like a multi-dimension sort of life experience that I plug into when I go into sleep. And I've maybe mentioned, some things like this here and there, very slightly, not really very much, because I don't want to come off like I'm crazy or weird or whatever. But now I just don't care. Now I'm just like, this is what's happening and this is what I'm experiencing. And I know I'm not the only one. I know there are other people out there who do, but because it's not normal and it's not kind of like in this physical realm that makes sense to most people, we just kind of want to avoid talking about it so we don't sound like crazy people. When in reality, we're just connected. And one of the things that Kai Dickens said on her podcast, which I can definitely relate to given my experience in religion and with my own dad, who was very mentally ill in a way that was very harmful to people, including himself. But I think that mental illness sprung almost as it was cyclical, right? There's depression, which also came as a result of not being able to live up to his ideals, but then also his, those core beliefs that I was talking about, earlier on this podcast that really shaped his view of himself and his place in the world and his need to dominate, which then of course pushed everybody away and led him to do very harmful things to other people. And when people say narcissism, I mean, my dad very much embodied that. It was the grandiose, I am above everyone else and you need to learn from me kind of attitude. So back to the Kai Dickens quote where she said that if religious men claim that they have seen a spiritual being, we praise them and say, wow, you really are connected to God. But if a woman does, then we tend to think, oh, she's a little crazy. There's a little witchcraft going on. There's something maybe not quite right about what she's doing. And this is very much the narrative of our culture. And that's okay. And I'm just to a point where I'm deciding it's okay for me to say what is happening, because I know I'm not the only one who experiences these things. And the more that we say them out loud, the more that I feel connected to other people. Taylor Swift has been instrumental for me in accepting my own femininity and my own beauty of being a woman. Her song Marjorie was very inspiring for me. It was about her grandmother, who she felt really was with her. I genuinely believe that when we hear ideas about what's happening with other people, that we can become open. Our consciousness literally opens to the possibilities of what is happening or what might be happening for us. So before I stray too far from my run the other day, I want to tell about that. I was out running when I just decided, after listening to that podcast by Kai Dickens, season 2, episode 2, I thought, what? I'm just going to reach out and talk to my mom. So on my run, I said, "Hey mom, how are you doing?" And I just got the response of, "I'm here. I've just been spending time with you, helping you with your music, helping you with your podcast, helping your siblings." Like, she's just spending her time helping us. And then she said, "I'm helping you be safe on the freeway." And specifically, the day before that, I had been merging onto the freeway, and they're doing some construction, so it's a little bit tighter of a merge than normal. And as I was merging on and going the typical speed that I would merging onto the freeway, there was another van coming toward me in the lane that I was merging into. And I just wasn't sure if I should speed up or slow down, and maybe that was just my bad. But I ended up not quite knowing what to do, and this van ended up having to kind of skid to a stop. And then as I sped up. As I looked in my rear view mirror, I saw smoke from rubber tires and then skid marks from a big semi truck that was right behind that van that was literally coming. That van was headed toward my driver's side door. And I said to my mom, "How did you stop that from hitting me?" And she said, now when I say she said, it was just like thoughts in my mind, like I was having a conversation with someone. And her response was, "Well, if I can call enough people quick enough, then I can have influence in your realm." But I couldn't have done it on my own. Like, she couldn't have done it by herself. She had to call others into action really quick. And she said, "Just like you can have influence in your realm if you call enough people," which I thought was fascinating, because my whole life I've wanted to be able to band together with people for music or some cause, a business or whatever. I don't like working alone. And I think about all the greatest people in this life who've really gone anywhere and accomplished anything. It's because they had a team behind them helping them with it. And, they might have started out solo, but then in order to really gain the influence that they have needed to, they've had an entire team helping them. So it made a lot of sense what she was saying to me. And I just thanked her for her help. I also heard early on in the conversation, I don't remember if it was before or after I talked with my mom. I think it was after. I heard my husband's granny say, "Just love my Nicky." She used to call him Nicky, and his name is Nick. And then she was like, "Just please love my Nicky. He loves you more than anyone in the world." And then she said, "Please tell him I'm sorry I didn't get to say goodbye." And after she said that, I said, "Okay, I will." But then I was like, should I tell him that? Like, what if it doesn't mean anything? What if I'm just making all of this up? So after the run, a little bit later in the run, I get this sense that my mom and his granny are chit-chatting, and they're with me, and I'm just running, and I'm visualizing their energies interacting. And then they're my mom tells me about some things. She's like, "You need to be more like me in your marriage." And I won't go into the details of what that means, because that was a personal thing for her to share with me. And she was very, very clear about what that looks like for me. And then she said, and then I was this realization that I've always tried to not be like her in marriage, but it turns out that the way that she was
was not how she needed to be in order to have a successful, thriving marriage because of who she was married to. But the way that she was really was a perfect display of how I could create even more peace and joy in my own home. I had to take on a lot of very masculine attributes to basically survive my life with my dad. But she reminded that I'm safe to kind of step into that full feminine. I had a realization that my mom and my husband's granny were both working together for our good. And before I kind of just thought, well, the universe in general is working together for my good. But now I actually believe that specific, and people have said this for a long time. I hear people saying, oh yeah, your spirit guides and, your ancestors and other people are there, you can call them in to help you. And I'm like, I don't really understand, I really couldn't connect to this idea until now. And now it feels very tangible, very real. So when I got done with my run, I pulled out my phone and started writing in my journal about what I had just experienced. And right when I was done writing in my journal about this, my husband video called me. And he was like, hey, how are you doing? And I was like, I'm good. And I'm like, I just went for a run and just like the most interesting things happened. And he was like, tell me more. I'm like, okay, but I'm a little scared to tell you. And he was like, okay. And he said, it's okay. And I was like, okay, I'm just a little bit nervous because I don't know if I'm going to be wrong or if I'm right. I don't really know. So he just said, so then I told him, I said, I told him what I heard about from his granny. And I said, she told me to tell you that she's sorry she didn't get to say goodbye. And I said, does this mean anything to you? He's like, I was the only one in my family who couldn't be there when she passed away. And I was just overwhelmed with beautiful emotion that this was real. She really did want me to send him a message. And so what's the difference between intuition and connection? I've been thinking about this. I heard somebody recently say that intuition is just a knowing. It's not loud. It's not, big. It's not really anything other than just like, that you're supposed to do this thing next. And that's really what this episode was, just a knowing. I just need to do this episode about death. And I've been wanting to for a while. And this was now the time. Death is just the next phase of our existence. And it's actually this really incredible new phase that, most of us don't really get peeks into. There was this time that I had I'll go into more specific dreams about my parents when I start talking about, I'll do an episode on dreams. But the thread for me in all of this still is music. Music is the primary way that I feel connected, alive, seen, and understood. And all that I want is to write. I just want to write music. And one of the things that I've been feeling in my own business lately is that I just haven't, I've been teaching other songwriters how to produce and mix and master their songs, but I haven't been able to feel the joy of writing and producing my own music as much as I want to. And, my songs come as a result of life experiences. Like I said, I use music for my own healing. Every song has its own story, and I genuinely hadn't have thought about my songs in this way for a long time, that my songs are their own beings. When I create a song, I literally are like, okay, I'm like, here. It's almost like I imagine it like a little bird. Like I've written this song and it's a little bird and it's this beautiful thing. And I'm like, hey, no, fly away. Go do your job. Whomever you're meant to touch, whoever you're meant to fly to, then please do that. And I've written many songs for other people's life experiences. I've done custom songs for deeply harrowing experiences for people. I've done love songs for other people. I've done love songs for, of course, myself. I've done all kinds of songs for myself. But every single song has a story. And for me, what makes this song so meaningful is the story that led to it. Just like when I think of a person, what makes a person so interesting is the story, the rich background of all that they've gone through that makes them who they are today. So I want to write songs for you. If you have love you want to share, if you have, with someone, if you are going through something really hard, or if you're not sure about something and you just want to put your thoughts and feelings to, or the story of what you're experiencing in your life, and you want that to be put to words, I want to help you with that. If you're ready to feel seen, understood, comforted, healed, or if there's something you want to manifest, I want to help you with that. I truly believe that I manifested my amazing husband through my songwriting, and that I healed my relationship with my dad through my songwriting. And it was by having the song and then playing it. I would play those songs over and over and over. And maybe you've done this with songs that already exist in the world. Maybe it was a hit song you heard that that just resonated so deeply, and you had to play it over and over and over and over and over again, and like literally just 100 times. Sometimes we need that as cathartic to our souls to just get the message that is in that song for us. There are frequencies and instruments and a style that deeply resonates or helps us feel into what we're feeling. And maybe it even helps you release your emotions, where you're laughing or you're crying or you're dancing. And all of those ways of release are extremely therapeutic. In the description of this podcast is a link. That link will ask you information about what you want in the song. It'll ask you a few questions so that I can get a really good feel for what it is that you want to have a song written about. And then we will have a conversation over the telephone. And then from that point on, we'll be rolling. It'll take about a week to get it to you. And then if you're interested in having me share your story and song, I can do so it would be anonymous on the podcast. Then I would be more than happy. I think that when we share our stories and songs with others in the world, we are accessing that healing and deeply comforting power of music. Let's work together. The links are below. And as always, have a beautiful, beautiful day. Notice the sunshine. If you have sunshine, notice something beautiful today. Until next week. My name is Andrea Belita, and this is the 1010 Podcast.